Also, Crispin, I'm going to share that slide in the final email to attendees. Just because I was like having a hard time tweaking and I wanted to make sure I had everyone's information.
Right.
So,
I just was offering you a draft, that's all.
oh, that was a great template. I did get Ventura stuff and I plugged it in. And it was like, oh, I need to do a lot of formatting because there were so many great resources there. But in the interim, we don't have a chat, but we can plug them into the Q&A once things get going.
I'm sorry about that. I forgot that I was gonna do that once I got off of the panel yesterday, and I'm sorry, I forgot.
It is perfectly fine. Time gets away from us all. Me every day. No idea. So many things on my to-do list. Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I just want to get Rufus on. Hey, Frank.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
I love that background, Frank.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, I know I've seen it. I know I've seen it. Just don't remember exactly where. It's on Dudley Street.
Blue Hill.
This one's the Blue Hill Ave.
Oh, okay. My stomping grounds.
I dabble, so it took me a little while to get it done, but I'm just messing around. It's my good friend of mine, Pro Black, who does a lot of amazing art around the city. So
That's a good one.
Have to get some notes together in the event that Rufus somehow can't join.
Frank, salute to putting that team of 21 together.
it was a process, to say the least, but I appreciate it.
300 plus applicants.
Guys ready? 6:01. So I'm going to open it up. We're going to go live. If everyone could just be muted in case there are any background noises. Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Everyone wants to go on mute. Good. Okay. And then I'll give it till like 6:03 to really get started. Just so folks have time to enter. Okay. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the City of Boston's Mayor, Mayor Wu, and Truyn Nguyen, the Director of the Office of Workforce Development for the City of Boston, I want to thank you all so much for joining this evening's virtual panel conversation titled The CORI Effect, Racial Disparities and Real Solutions. My name is Bethany Sirota, and I am the Deputy Director of Workforce Equity and Inclusion for the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development for the City of Boston. And along with other city leaders, two of whom are with us this evening, I have had the privilege of leading the work of Project Opportunity, and I will also serve as the moderator for this evening's program. This panel is hosted by the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development's Project Opportunity, which is a city initiative that aims to create equitable opportunities for residents impacted by CORI, and a program I am proud to lead collaboratively with other city departments, including the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens, the Mayor's Office of Black Male Advancement, Power Corps Boston, and SOAR Boston. Thank you to the Mayor, to the OWD staff, and all of our partners, the Project Opportunity team, of course, for your support, and gladly to the panelists for serving to contribute to this very important dialogue. In this evening's conversation about the CORI effect, racial disparities and real solutions, we'll have what I hope will be an engaging discussion that will explore racial inequities in the criminal justice system and, importantly, available resources to mitigate their impacts. Before we get started, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping matters. So the duration of the program is scheduled to run for an hour and a half from 6 to 7:30 p.m. With time at the end for questions and answers. But do feel free to engage with us using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen during the program. The program is happening via Zoom webinar. So with the exception of the panelists, all participants are off camera and muted, but you will be able to submit questions again using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we do encourage your engagement throughout the program. We will try to get to questions and comments during the conversation, but we'll certainly address as many as time allows toward the end of the conversation. Please do employ self-care as needed. This conversation is being recorded and will be available afterward online. At this point, I want to turn it over to Dr. Rufus J. Falk, Senior Policy Advisor to Mayor Wu, to talk more about the background and the goals of Project Opportunity, as well as the city and Mayor Wu's investment into residents impacted by their CORI. Dr. Falk?
Thank you, Bethany. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, a little taken aback. Just heard the news about Uvalde, Texas. So just want to make sure we send some prayers out to that. Had a mass shooting out there elementary school, and I'm a father of an elementary age child. So just want to extend some thoughts and prayers to that community. But this initiative today and this conversation that we sort of started about 3 years ago was really about who deserves a second chance. And as a city, what's our responsibility to ensure that we are providing access to opportunities and resources to allow those individuals who have been impacted by CORI, who are returning citizens, substantive and sort of sustainable pathways to reintegrate successfully and to be able to pick up their lives and to even move further than them where they left off at. Brother Tibbs on here is going to mention about CORI should not be a stigma. CORI should not be a sort of red A on your chest that sort of precludes you from moving forward or being able to achieve and a level of livelihood in the city. And as city staff, we're trying to make sure that Boston is actually living up to its mantra of being a city on a hill and providing opportunity for everyone. So a part of this conversation is about programming and ensuring that we're providing opportunities. But I think the larger part of this conversation is about the narrative around individuals who are impacted by CORI, individuals who are returning citizens, and what our responsibility as a community and as a city is and are to those, our community members, because they're our brothers, our sisters, our parents, our cousins, and we have a duty to make sure that we are doing our best to create some equitable opportunities for every resident within the city of Boston. And I had to make sure I mention the investments that Mayor Wu just made through our Office of Returning Citizens. Office of Returning Citizens is the main goal is to be that hub for individuals impacted by CORI and individuals returning, where they can not only receive resources, but be able to receive some mental health supports. And happy to say that right now the budget's at least at $1.88 million, and that's moving up from about $400,000 as of the last fiscal year. So it is a amazing investment, but we know that's just a drop in the bucket for what the actual need is, because this is a bigger issue outside of the city. So Project Opportunity is one step, but we want to make sure everybody on this call recognizes that we're trying to build a network for these services, build a coalition around this initiative, and ensuring that we are truly being the city that we all know that Boston can be. So with that, I'll pass it back to Ms. Sirota.
Thank you so much, Dr. Falk, and thank you for the great work that you're doing and leading this work to support this particularly vulnerable population. I also want to just take a moment, forgive me for the sound, I live in Roxbury. I also want to take a moment to just lift up the fact that tomorrow we do have a CORI-friendly community job fair that will be hosted virtually. And then last week, if you missed it, we hosted a CORI-friendly education job training fair as well. So I will make sure I plug the recordings as well as the flyer and registration link for tomorrow's job fair in the chat or in the Q&A during the duration of the program. But I just want to make sure that we're lifting up opportunities that are readily available for folks. And then of course, our free CORI sealing and expungement clinic. If you can remove the barrier to of a CORI altogether to employment, then you won't necessarily need CORI-friendly job opportunities. But again, it's open to all members of the community. The employment partners are CORI-friendly, but again, they're just opportunities for folks to jump into the workforce now. So now I just want to take a moment and have all of the panelists, all of our esteemed guests and experts just introduce themselves. And we can start with Tehran, then go to Devo, Crispin, Ventura, and Evelyn. And Frank. And you guys can popcorn.
Hi, I'm Tehran Tibbs. I'm the program manager at Stride Boston Employment Service. Devo.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Just want to jump in really quickly. If you guys could just touch on really briefly the resources that you offer to folks in case they don't catch it through the duration of the program. Really important work that you're doing, and I want to make sure people know.
Okay, so again, my name is Tehran Tibbs. I'm the program manager at Stride Boston, where we have 3 different programs. We have our Strive Start program, which is our core program. We have Rapid Reentry for clients that are age 18 to 24. And we have the Central Sterile Processing training for people that want to become Central Sterile Processing technicians.
Hi, how's everybody doing? I'm David Jefferson. I am the Executive Director of Power Corps Boston. Power Corps Boston is a new program that we just brought here to Boston. They already have one up and running in Philadelphia. It's a great program model, and we wanted to have that program here in Boston. So we partnered with them and we put it together, and we'll be launching next month, June 13th. You can Google us at powercorpsboston.org if you're interested in having a young person register. Power Corps Boston's workforce development training program that's designed to help get young adults in the Boston area into the green industry. So we're going to provide training and then also job placement assistance into livable wage jobs. It's a 6-month program. During that 6 months, folks will receive $550 a week to go through the program. They'll receive a T-Pass to get back and forth from the program. They'll receive a myriad of support services to make sure that they're able to make it through the program, and they also receive soft skills to better help prepare them for the work environment. Love to have you guys join. If you're interested, again, you can check us out at powercorpsboston.org. And again, I'm David Jefferson, and I'm the Executive Director, and I pass it on to Crispin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for including me. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Crispin Birnbaum. I'm an attorney and an Access to Justice Fellow. And right now I focus my work entirely on trying to help people who have criminal records move forward. And the way I do that is in two ways. One is that I give free trainings on Massachusetts criminal records sealing and expungement anywhere in the Commonwealth, generally to staff of nonprofits so they can help their clients, and also to people with records to have a conversation about what the rules are and how to move forward. The second thing is that I helped start a free CORI clinic, and in partnership with both Lawyers Clearinghouse and the City of Boston. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, as the program goes on. But we welcome anyone who's here today with a record to register for the free CORI clinic. You will be assigned to a lawyer who can meet with you and talk about your record and your options for sealing or expungement. It's entirely your decision which options to choose. So that's a general summary of my work.
I believe I was next in the lineup. My name is Ventura Dennis. I am a senior attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services, and we help represent clients in sealing cases as well as expungement. We also work on legislative reform and appellate cases as well, especially right now because expungement laws have just passed and we're trying to make sure they're implemented in the right way that will help the communities as best as possible. We do offer a clinic virtually with the Boston Bar Association, and we also have an in-person clinic at Roxbury Court every third Thursday of the month. I believe that that information will also be given out later on in the program. And yeah, so we are here to offer free legal help for everyone who is income eligible. We assess what's on a record, and then we evaluate the next steps after that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Velasquez. I also work for Strive Boston. I am a case manager. One other program that we have available, it's we do Jobs Club, and it's where we get you, where we could combine, where we get people together like employers and then our clients, and we help them. Rather than the month or 2 months of getting into a Brigham and Women's Hospital, it's like 3 weeks. So we're that pipeline for our clients and partnerships. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Farrell. I am the Executive Director of the Office of Black Male Advancement in the City of Boston. Our focus is improving outcomes and reducing systemic barriers to the advancement for Black men and boys living in the city. As part of our work, we focus on policies, programs, resources, and forming local and national partnerships to ensure Black men and boys have the support to thrive and share in our city's prosperity. Thank you.
I think we just, Rufus, do you want to introduce yourself and the work that you do?
Okay, Rufus J. Falk, former Director of Public Safety for the Mayor's Office, also served as sort of the Director for the Office of Attorney Citizens, currently serve as the Senior Policy Advisor to the Mayor. Largely, the role is to ensure that some of the resources and some of the sort of programmatical aspects of service deliveries, particularly for neighborhoods most disparately impacted by trauma and community violence, are receiving their fair share. So that's my role. My role is to sort of make sure that the hood gets taken care of.
Thank you all for serving as panelists and for the service that you do and the work that you do with this very important segment of our population and arguably one of the most vulnerable. Very excited that you're here. You all are experts in the work that you do. And it really means a lot to us that you would spend your evening hours contributing to this important dialogue. So thank you all again. So as we begin to really take a deep dive into the topic of this evening's program, which I will remind you is about the CORI effect, racial disparities, and real solutions, where we'll explore racial inequities in the criminal justice system and available resources, many of which you've heard so far, to mitigate their impacts. And so as we dive in, I want to start off with the data. To quote the famous Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, men lie, women lie, numbers don't.
Just don't.
Just to add a bit of levity to these very heavy findings. So to talk more about the facts rooted in data, to better root this conversation and lift up why we're even here, I'm going to turn it over to Access to Justice Fellow, SJC's, that's the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, Pro Bono Public Award recipient for all of her great work, Key Project Opportunity Collaborator, Public Servant Extraordinaire, and CORI expert, Attorney Crispin Birnbaum, who's going to talk more about CORI and, of course, the recent data relating to this topic. Attorney Birnbaum?
Thank you so much. So one of the issues is what the heck is a CORI? So just to make sure we're sort of all on the same playing field before we jump off into higher topics, if you will. A CORI is the Massachusetts official record, criminal record for someone. So a CORI begins at arraignment. So it's not until someone is brought into a courtroom and arraigned in front of a judge on a criminal charge that there becomes a CORI. And the CORI is really court activity. So it follows the person's case or charge from arraignment all the way through to the case is disposed. That is something that's sort of alarming for some people who don't know a lot about criminal records. We can't really just sit back and think that a CORI is a record of convictions. In Massachusetts, a CORI is a record of court activity of a criminal charge. So it follows the person right from the first charge at arraignment all the way through to the case being disposed. Let's talk for a minute about what a CORI is not. If you had a copy of a CORI and you were looking at it, it would be adult Massachusetts criminal charges only. So what's not on it are juvenile charges, if there are any, out-of-state charges like Rhode Island, New Hampshire, any other state. It does not include federal charges, and it does not include sealed charges. So if anyone is looking at a copy of a CORI, it is adult Massachusetts criminal cases only, again, from arraignment or beginning in court to the disposition of those charges. Now, the question about how to protect someone with a CORI is who has access to that set of charges and court information. And that is controlled by the CORI, the agency that runs CORI, and they have an online CORI system and a lot of information on mass.gov, that's the state's website, mass.gov/ the agency's initials. Those initials are CJIS. Criminal Justice Information Services. So if anybody here wants to get a copy of their own CORI, they can register on the iCORI system through that website, mass.gov/CJIS. Now, typically there's a $25 fee to register and get a copy of your own CORI. However, that fee can be waived if somebody is already receiving public benefits or is got low enough income to meet the threshold. Now, one of the things that I was asked to talk about also is the partnership that we created when we created a free CORI clinic. There were many others that were doing that work before us, but we did start in 2019 an additional free CORI clinic for lawyers to be provided to people who wanted to talk about their record. And to get the word out about our free clinic, which we operate anywhere in the Commonwealth, virtually, we can reach anyone with a mass record. We did start a partnership with the City of Boston. And so anybody that comes into the city through Project Opportunity, and I believe you'll be given that website at the end, if you entered the Project Opportunity website, you will be referred to the CORI clinic that we run. And again, that clinic is entirely free. There will be services in terms of just reviewing the record with the person, and then, of course, discussing whether or not that record is eligible for sealing services or expungement services, or maybe both. But all of that legal representation through to the end of the sealing case or the end of the expungement case is free. Again, we'll give you the registration information at the end, but we highly encourage that that all residents of Boston who want to talk to a lawyer for free about their record and see if they can seal or expunge should definitely sign up. We want to have no one left behind. The whole point is the second chances that I believe Dr. Falk mentioned earlier, trying to help people move forward with jobs, housing, and other opportunities like education, training, licensing, loans, wherever there is an impact because of a CORI, that's the kind of person that we hope can register and come in and talk to an attorney. Now, one of the things that's really foremost in this line of work, in this topic, is that anyone who has a CORI has a barrier or an impact imposed upon them for long after that court case is over. You know, the court case is bad enough, probably not anyone's best moment, but once that case is over, there's this secondary effect of having a Massachusetts criminal record. And that, again, impacts anyone with a record. But what's really important to talk about tonight is the disproportionate impact on communities and individuals of color. And I highly recommend to you a study that's very reputable. It was done by Harvard Law School in the fall of 2020, so roughly a year and a half ago. This data I'm going to mention just briefly, but you're welcome to go and find a reference to it on the Harvard Law School website or contact any of us and we can connect you to the study. Harvard Law School crunched numbers that they were given from our court system. So this is data I'm going to mention again in brief that is from the Massachusetts criminal courtrooms. And what's alarming about what's proven with these facts and this data is that there's this disproportionate impact on people of color. So what is the data? At the time, the data showed that African Americans in Massachusetts make up something like 6.5% of the population. And yet, when we look at the African American defendants in caseload, in criminal cases in our court system, there's this overrepresentation of 17.1% in the criminal caseload. Nearly 3 times the representation, if you will, in the criminal caseload. When we look to the Latinx community, 8.7% roughly in our Massachusetts population, and yet an overrepresentation again of 18.3% in our criminal cases. When we look to the white population in Massachusetts, it's the reverse, as you probably suspect. At the time, Caucasians made up 74% of our Massachusetts population, and yet a mere, in comparison, 58.7% of the criminal cases. What does this tell us? Many, many things that we'll be discussing tonight. It's alarming, but what it does is cement in data the fact that people of color and therefore families of color and whole communities of color are being left behind because of this disproportionate impact and barrier that's thrown up when people try to move forward with their lives and get jobs and housing and other opportunities. And the last thing I'll mention is that when we think about the overrepresentation of people of color in the courtroom, of course, there's a story to be told and to unpack tonight in our discussion about how that gets to be so. So is there a greater number of folks of color who are being targeted for investigation, or a higher percentage arrested, or charged with higher or more serious crimes, held on bail, held on higher bail? Who is being sentenced to prison? Who is being sentenced for long prison terms? And of course, the impact after prison and when people try to re-enter society and return to their old lives and move forward. So I think that data helps set up the conversation. Thank you so much for letting me present tonight.
Thank you so much, Attorney Birnbaum, for sharing that brief synopsis. Again, if anyone is interested in finding this Harvard Law study, please reach out to any one of us and we'll share a link. But now that we are firmly rooted in this conversation through the data that alarmingly highlight the disparities in the Massachusetts criminal justice system. And as Crispin mentioned, the overrepresentation of Black and Brown people in our communities in Massachusetts courts, as provided by, Harvard, which is one of the most renowned research institutions in our own backyard. I really want to engage with all of you in the audience, especially our panelists, to really explore these topics and help us understand from your lens, what are some of the contributing factors that lend themselves to what we found in this disparity study. So I'm going to start with Dr. Falk, and then we'll go to Tehran and Frank, and then anyone else who would like to jump in, and we'll go on to other questions. Dr. Falk?
Thank you, Bethany, and thank you, Crispin, for sort of laying out those numbers. The sad reality is that many of us didn't need those numbers to sort of validate the fact that we know the system, A, was never designed to even feature Black and Brown people as citizens, nor was it ever designed to help us thrive. So having a historical understanding of how laws and policies were created, that's where we sort of see these examples, these continued examples of discrimination and biases. So I think for me, as for somebody who sort of wears two hats, one as a agent of the government, but the other as a Black man born in Roxbury, I often see how the Black experience is oftentimes intentionally and unintentionally forgotten, and oftentimes because it's forgotten, we continue to get pushed further and further behind. So I'm gonna be honest with you, it's real sobering to think about it. Just anecdotally, I played on a 12 and under basketball team at the Roxbury Boys and Girls Club, and out of my 11 teammates, I'm the only one who didn't go to prison. I remember being deathly afraid of being arrested, knowing what that could potentially do to my life, my livelihood, knowing that I had friends who were equally talented, some more talented than I, but because they didn't have access to certain opportunities and weren't able to achieve certain things. And putting my city hat on, that reality is what we try to address the fact that it's oftentimes a crapshoot to navigate Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, regardless of your capacity. And the individuals on this call have all been able to navigate the system successfully, but we all know that we had many friends and family members who weren't that blessed to do the same. So we're trying to get away from the fact where it's our stories are exceptions, and we want our stories to be more the norms. And I think Crispin gave us the numbers, but I think everyone needs to have a real basic understanding of the historical foundation of the laws and policies that impact not only the state of Massachusetts, but this country as a whole, and how those laws and policies still create this level of divide and sort of lack of access and divestment in Black and Brown people in their neighborhoods. So with that, I'll pass it to my brother, Tehran.
Thank you. So there's something that just jumped at me while Crispin was speaking, and just the word criminal. And the record starts when you're arrested and arraigned. You haven't been committed of anything, but yet you have this record of being a criminal. And I said, wow, well, wait a minute. Nobody was convicted yet. What if they didn't do it, right? And if that's where the record starts, that word needs to come off of that. And then I'm thinking like, okay, 17 years old, drink alcohol for the first time, just messing around with friends, got a hold of some alcohol, get arrested for drinking in public, or right, they pull up, you're a kid, what are you doing drinking? You get arrested, right? In a summer day, right? Your parents come get you, and because it's early in the day, you're back outside you're still a little intoxicated because you didn't, they didn't make you stay till you wore it off and all of that. And then you get into a fist fight with a friend, nothing serious. New police come and they arrest you again. It's time for disorderly. Remember, you're 17. That happened to me. I got arrested twice in one day because I was drinking alcohol and I was 17. Does that make me a criminal? Like, really? And how many years is this going to be on my record? So I'm thinking back to that story and then I'm like, this all started before I even had any idea on what was the impact was going to be. And I just think that there has to be a bigger conversation than when I look at the laws, or even the court system, I say, how does somebody get to a space where they have this lengthy criminal record? And then I remember going to court, and not just me, all of my friends, nobody takes anything to trial. You go in there, the lawyer says they're going to give you a year, 6 months probation, but you can go home. You say, I want to go home. So you just take it. And you're not really thinking that this is going to affect me when you're 17, 18, 19. And then all of a sudden, let's say, for instance, you have a child or something, you're 21, 22 years old, and now you're ready to be more of an adult, be more of a man. But you've already created this record. And now when you go to get a job, now they're telling you, you have this criminal offenders record and they can't hire you. And you're like, it was just probation. Like, never was even found guilty because you didn't even know. You're saying, oh, they're going to give you a slap on the wrist. You don't know the law. You don't know. I mean, you learn really quickly after that when doors start closing, but you didn't really even know it was going to turn out like this. And as a result, a lot of times you may start to do unlawful things to get by. Like, it actually helps the behavior because you're like, okay, I can't feed my family now. So now maybe you're selling some weed or you're doing something unlawful. And it just starts a vicious cycle. And you never even knew that this is what it was going to lead up to the day where you actually wanted to like step away and do something really good. And you have this criminal record following you. And that's something that is not, it's been discussed in with me and amongst my friends, but I don't hear too much about like, wait a minute, do we know that we're ruining these young men's lives? So when I see CORI reform, and I read a bunch on it today, I didn't see that in there. So was it discussed, right? So it just gives me pause where it's like, we got to go back to the beginning. The CORI originally was just for law enforcement. And through legislation, it became, something that people had to see. Let's say if you were going to be a foster parent or something, then it had to be something people see when they had the war on drugs. Then now we're talking about people being scared of people that look like me and them saying, you know what, if we hire him, he might like do something, bring drugs, bring guns. And it's like, but you never even met me before, or you don't know me. So why would you assume that, right? So it became a scare tactic for people to get elected, for bills to pass, and the people that were doing these things, they weren't being affected. And it seems that their family members weren't being affected as much either. So I'll pass it, but that's just what came to mind. It like hit me like a ton of bricks.
Thank you for that, Teron. Frank, do you want to jump in and maybe talk about your thoughts on this? Maybe
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I just, looking back at the same, Harvard report, just want to kind of acknowledge the late Honorable Chief Justice Gantz and the work, that he led around CORI and criminal justice reform. And just looking at some of the data of, specifically around Black men, where Black men are the least likely to be released on a personal recognizance, but also most likely to have bail imposed or to be detained without bail. And, just like those data points just shows like how much work we have to do when we talk about CORI. And, to Tehran's point, where if you go into, the courthouse, or you're brought into the courthouse because you're not released, your goal is to get home. And so you make decisions that will get you home the fastest, but may have kind of the long impact on your kind of outcomes. And I think that's something that is, it just stuck out to me, where a lot of folks, come in contact with the quote unquote criminal justice system, and they're pleading out. And now they have these CORIs, and it impacts them when they try to get jobs, when they try to, I think the number one issue that Black men face, not only in the city, but across the country, is housing. If I'm coming home, even if I want to get released early on parole, um, if my family is in the public housing development, then, I can't be released to there, or I can't be on their lease. And, a lot of people don't look at it. There's a huge kind of population of Black men that come home, or in our neighborhoods, that would be considered homeless based off of their circumstances. But the society doesn't look at it as homeless when they look at homeless population, because, we are forced to kind of navigate to families' homes and friends' homes and bounce around and try to figure those things out and kind of be resilient. We talk about second chances. In order to be set up for success, housing and unemployment is key for that. And if we have to do a better job of removing those barriers to housing and employment, especially, on a city level, where we're now looking at our employment opportunities, where, there are a lot that have a kind of a CORI requirement. We're looking at, which jobs actually require a CORI look versus ones that are just have been there historically, that should be removed, so we can get more people employed in the city. But then also, working with, Rufus is like, how do we have those conversations around housing? Um, you know, for some reason, we've been avoiding those conversations and dealing with housing, and we have to do a better job and be urgent around addressing housing needs for individuals impacted by CORI. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think those conversations are happening now. But it's going to take political will, local, state, and national, to address those concerns.
Thank you so much, all of you, for your thoughts. Dr. Falk, there's not enough program or equitable access to programming. Tehran, a lot of people not even realizing the impact of accepting a plea agreement versus, seeking a fair trial out of fear or pressure, or maybe it seems easier. Um, Potentially a lack of diversity in the judiciary, a lack of prosecutors, a lack of diversionary programs or progressive prosecution. And from my lens, I always thought, literacy, if Black and brown boys were reading on grade level between the third and the fifth grade, between is it 8 and 10 years old, they're 85% less likely to come into contact with the criminal justice system when they turn age of majority, or 18, and 85% less likely to recidivize upon coming into contact with the criminal justice system if literacy is at the forefront. So I'm always promoting literacy, and that information comes from Michelle Alexander in her book titled The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in an Age of Colorblindness, as well as School to Prison by Dr. Kunjufu. So I'm happy to share those resources with you all. But to your point, Frank, I think, as you mentioned, a criminal record and being disproportionately impacted or disparately impacted by the criminal justice system in Massachusetts in particular, as the study shows, you will experience barriers to entering the workforce, to housing, to education, to other vital resources. So, we're really looking to work collaboratively. As you mentioned, it's political will. I'm fortunate to serve under an administration that does believe in this population. Your office was formed. There's more financial support to back this population. We have a number of external partners who are doing this work. But if we could essentially remove the barrier to a CORI altogether, I think we might see more equitable access, despite the housing market, to housing, to employment opportunities and education and vital resources. So with that, I want to turn it over to Attorney Ventura Dennis, just to talk about what you're seeing on the ground, and what it's like in the CORI clinics, and why clinics such as GBLS or Project Opportunity are really important to supporting this population, and then the importance of representation for pro se litigants, for folks who don't have an attorney who are trying to navigate this process, because we really want to remove the barrier to those who are eligible for sealing and don't even realize that they're eligible. So Attorney Dennis, if you could, share what you're seeing.
Yes, I just wanted to start with a quote. This is like very relevant, which is, "I forgive myself for believing that I should have known better when I didn't know how." And that's a Ayala Vanzant quote, and I'm a huge fan of her, but I think it gets to the root of what we're talking about here, which is a lot of people who have criminal records are penalized for things that they do not know, do not understand. And as Terrence said before, a lot of people in court, they're being inconvenienced by being there for months and months and months as their case goes along. And so they tend to plea, not take things to trial, and then have to deal with these years and years of collateral consequences. And so what I see in the court a lot, unfortunately, is the pro se litigants who don't have the knowledge, who don't have the help, are treated the same as if they are an attorney in regards to the CORI sealing and the expungement, and they're held to a standard that is unrealistic and unfair. Because of course, if you're not a lawyer, you're not going to understand how to properly explain a legal standard of why you're here to seal your record. You just know, I can't get a job, I can't find housing, I can't pursue my healthcare training opportunity because of these charges. But you may not know how to communicate that effectively. You may be frustrated because you've been sitting in court for 2.5 hours, waiting to have a 10-minute conversation with a judge who may or may not be listening. And as we said before, it does go to the lack of diversity within the judiciary and the lack of understanding that the court has just across the board, where pro se litigants are not given the help and the resources that they need. And that's why the CORI clinics that exist, the Greater Boston Legal Services, as well as Project, as well as with Crispin, are so important, because we have to educate our community exactly how to navigate these things. I did want to mention there are currently 2 bills our office is pushing right now about automatic record sealing, which would allow people, once they are eligible to seal their record, it would be sealed automatically. Right now, you have to wait 3 years for a misdemeanor, 7 years for felonies, and send in a form. We're hoping that if we pass this bill, soon as the time has been met, automatically sealed. You don't have to take that extra step, because what happens now is people don't realize it's an issue until they get that record back from a housing authority or an employer. And so if time has passed, it just makes sense to have that record sealed automatically. The other bill is a rehabilitation bill, which would allow judges to issue rehabilitation certificates for those who are turning their life around, doing the job training, pursuing the opportunities that will get them the jobs. And that's really important, because it will help not only those who have Massachusetts charges, but those with federal charges and out-of-state charges. And so if you want more information of that, it's on masslegalhelp.org in the CORI section. We have our fact sheets there that explain a lot more about those bills. But as we said, we have to encourage community engagement. We have to educate our communities and those who need the help the most, that there is help out there, and that a CORI is not the be all end all of you moving forward and being able to support yourself and your family. But yes, we have to start at looking at how we can get more help in the courtroom for those who need it, and expanding the legal field to those who have been affected. I'm also from Roxbury and Dorchester, Boston, so I know many family members and friends who have been through the court system and still wouldn't be able to navigate it without my help. But I'm only one attorney in a sea of many, many issues and problems. And so the way we do that is we make sure that it keeps expanding. And we know that we need the help because I just looked at the numbers that I was able to access. And in 2019, there was 153,000 criminal complaints. Oh, let me correct that, 193,000. However, there was only 5,900 petitions to seal. We know there is a huge gap there between the people who understand that this even exists as an opportunity and a resource for them, and we know the need is there. And so in all of our organizations and all of our attempts to help, we know that the need is there and that there are ways to reach the people. And I hope that you will take advantage of the resources that are shared here today going forward and to really spread the word so that we can help as many people as possible.
Thank you so much, Attorney Dennis, for all of the 10 years of advocacy and representation on this front, and especially around moving the needle around legislative advocacy, because I mean, all of that work has really caused a dramatic shift in eligibility requirements, at least a reduction in requirements. And as you mentioned, with the significant number of CORIs that are issued annually, only 25% or so, my numbers aren't as up to date as yours, but let's say only a quarter of those who are eligible for sealing or expungement are actually taking advantage of it. So in the words of Crispin, Attorney Birnbaum, we're only touching the tip of the iceberg of folks who are potentially eligible and could be served by services such as the Greater Boston Legal Services, Project Opportunity, the Lawyers Clearinghouse, and many other organizations that are looking to support residents remove this barrier. So if you don't know if you're eligible, don't do the math on your own. I recommend sitting down with one of our attorneys. With Project Opportunity, there is no financial requirement. You don't necessarily have to be too rich or too poor. We'll take everyone. And so our clinic is free. And so if you want to just assess whether or not you're eligible, certainly do take advantage of the clinic. There are some folks, and many on this call, or two on this call, who will speak about why you may or may not decide to seal from personal experience. And then maybe Crispin can jump in with just a few points about why someone might not be interested in sealing. Maybe there are immigration implications. But first, I want to start with Davo, just to talk about, share your experience around having a CORI, why you chose to get it sealed, how you went through Project Opportunity, what that experience was like for you. And then I know, Tehran, you decided, after 17 years of having a CORI not to. So maybe some of your reasons for deciding not to seal. So I'll start with you, Davo.
Thank you, Bethany. So many great points that were made thus far. And really want to say thanks for the work that you're doing around the bills that you're trying to get pushed, Attorney Dennis. Super cool. I wish that there wasn't a necessity for those kinds of things. Like why would you need a judge to basically write you a good conduct letter? So I look at that type of a letter, the necessity of it is there, but I look at it as like, it's such a bad situation that we find ourselves in as a society, and more importantly for folks who would need that letter written for them. I look at it like there should be some legislation around looking at folks who've had an interaction with the criminal justice system as a group of folks who are protected group. So if you look at ethnic groups or religious groups, where you cannot discriminate against them because of. And I feel like this should be a group that should be looked at in that same regard. So going back to my own personal experience, I had an interaction with the criminal justice system, several of them in my younger age. Choices that I made put me in those situations. And I was released 20 plus years ago now. So for many of those years, while I was out, I didn't have my CORI sealed. Some of those years I wasn't eligible, but for many of those years I was, and I didn't get it sealed because I used it as a conversation piece for folks who are experiencing some of the hurdles that having a CORI could present to you, excuse me. And I was able to navigate around some of those things. And I used that to encourage people to not let that criminal background stop you from pursuing life, and for going for the gusto per se. And my life is not everybody's life, and I understand that. And some of the opportunities that I was afforded, not everybody was afforded those things. Some due to CORI, some not. So I was able to make it in life pretty far, achieved a number of different things without having my CORI sealed. And then one day I went into a financial institution to do some work, and they allowed me to come in and do the work. But upon my exit, they stopped me and said, hey, you can't come back into the building until you get some paperwork that says this has been addressed. And I'm like, dude, I've been out, I own property, I own a business, I have degrees, I've traveled the world, I've totally left that lifestyle alone a decade plus ago. And this was still something that came up and haunted me. And so for that reason, I did get it sealed, because I never wanted to be in a situation where I wasn't allowed access due to some stuff that I did over 20 years ago. So that was the reason I chose to do it. I was definitely reluctant to do it, and was able to navigate many of the obstacles that CORI does present without any issues, and encouraged other folks to, because of my success in doing it, that I wasn't special at all, that you can do these same things and probably do even much more than what I was able to achieve. But that one incident definitely burnt me. And as mentioned early on in this call, sometimes it's too late. That rock was already thrown. So even though I was able to get my CORI sealed later, that could have prevented me from an employment opportunity. It could have prevented me from an educational opportunity, could have prevented me from a housing opportunity. And as Attorney Dennis was pointing out, these collateral consequences, I got sentenced here, and I'm still paying for it many years later, after I'm not on parole, not on probation. I'm a citizen, I'm paying taxes, I'm using coupons, I'm voting, all kinds of stuff. I am a born again citizen per se. And yet I still can get burnt from some stuff that happened decades plus ago. So another term that we should also be taking a look at is hidden sentences. Is kind of synonymous with collateral consequences, but again, things that follow you years and years after your sentence has been disposed of. And as Teron pointed out, the pressure that you can be put under while you're incarcerated, and some of the stats that he also pointed out on who gets out, who doesn't get out. Frank pointed out some of those stats as well about racially who's being released from bail and that whole nine, who stays on held detained for long periods of time while we're fighting a case. Those kinds of pressures will definitely put you in situations where you're like, I'll do whatever is needed to get me out of this. And if that means taking some ridiculous probation kind of a sentence, or even taking a time served, like if it'll let me out the quickest path to release, I want to go that, and not really looking at the long-term effects of what this can do to your life, and how long this will follow you into your future. So that's some of my experience with it. I'll pass it to the brother Teron to share whatever he has to share. Yes.
Went through Project Opportunity?
I did go to Project Opportunity, but I actually did it experimental, Bethany. I had still my CORI before that. I had went through it because I'm in this line of work. The program in particular that the ED of now is a CORI-friendly program. I help folks who have those kinds of backgrounds navigate life once they're released. So sometimes before I'm going to offer a resource to a person like, hey, you should go here, you should go here, I try it before I buy it. And so I'll go through the process myself before I offer it to some folks who, in many regards, they don't have the time to be wasting going through something that's going to be a dead end street, or they're not going to get the results they're looking for. So before I refer you to something, if I have the opportunity to go through it, I'll do it. And I signed up, and folks reached back out, and the process was going down the path that it needed to go down. But as mentioned, I had already previously had my CORI sealed before I tried you guys out, but I'll put the stamp of approval on it that it does work, and the folks are very customer service friendly. So I would feel comfortable, confident in referring a person to go through that process.
Thank you for that shout out, Davo. Project
Soon to be, soon to be, soon to be.
Opportunity.
Speak it into existence.
Foreshadowing here. But absolutely, I think Project Opportunity and our partnership with the Lawyers Clearinghouse, and over 100 trained pro bono attorneys in the private and public sector across the Commonwealth. They donate their time, and they will represent folks if they're eligible, from whether it's just the filing the petition or filing a motion in court and arguing before a judge to advocate for the sealing or expungement of someone's record. I think expungement is a little different, but I'm glad to hear that you had a good experience. And Teron, can you just talk briefly about why you chose not to seal your record?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you why I didn't. So I knew it was going to be, from my last conviction, I knew it was going to be a rough road ahead. And I had a chip on my shoulder. I said, you know what? I'm smart. I went to BLS. I'm smart. There's no reason why I can't navigate this world and build a life for myself, right? So that was my mind frame. So I went back to school. I got 2 college degrees. And my thing was, I just wanted to prove that it could be done. Just because I had went down this road, got in trouble, that doesn't mean that the people who didn't get in trouble are smarter than me. Like, I'm just telling y'all exactly, this is how I'm thinking, right? I got a job, and I kept my job. I kept my job for as long as I wanted to keep it, until I moved on and got a better job, and I landed as an intern at Strive in 2011. And I've been at Strive ever since. And I've been offered plenty of jobs, but Strive has been my support system. So I got around some people. There's an ingredient that goes into coming back to life, building yourself back up. But it's a hard road to travel. When I hear Frank talk about housing, I know I couldn't get subsidized or whatever. I have felony convictions. So I saved the money, and I made the down payment, the first, last, and security, right? I just didn't take no for an answer with my record. Yes, I have a record, but I've had my job for 11 years. I have really good credit. And what do you need? Actually, they made me pay first, last. That's what they wanted. And then after the fact, they made me pay them another security. And that may have had something to do with my record, now that I think back. So I paid, and I just didn't let people tell me no. And that's the way I went at it. I went into rooms. Even when I applied to a private college, on the front of the application, the paper application, it said I may not be eligible for financial aid if I've been convicted of a felony, a class B felony. I remember I tore it up and threw it in the trash, but my support system said fill it out anyway. And I filled it out. And when I left Bunk Hill Community College, my GPA was like a 3.84. So it was like, I ended up meeting with the dean of that college. They requested a meeting with me. And then I'm like, is this the regular procedure? And I met with the dean. And because I had been already working on, at the time, it was the 3 strikes law. And I was on a panel with Professor Ogletree, Reverend Rivers, and all of them. I was familiar with the language. And so I had to write an essay. I wrote the essay, she read it, and then she asked for a meeting. And when I went in there, I'm from Strive. I got my suit on, I got my Strive pen. I know how to interview. I teach people how to interview. So it was easy for me to speak the language, right? And so I basically told her, as my education level increases, the recidivism rate decreases. The chances of me doing something that I've done in my past is little to none. And she gave me a $10,000 scholarship. So it was working for me. However, and I guess you could say in the last 24 hours, after having the brief conversation with Davo yesterday, I think I'm changing my stance on that. Because I believe that I should be eligible to walk through doors and I shouldn't be questioned. The fact of me getting arrested or something like that, I don't live that kind of life. So the chances are slim, more slim today than ever. And I guess you could say in a sense, I've earned that to be taken off my record.
Well, if you ever.
And so I thought about that. So I'm changing my stance. I'm changing my stance. Thank you, Dave.
And Teron, you've proven your point that you could do it with the CORI. You've proven the point. You can do it.
I've already proven it. And now I feel as though that's probably something that I'm going to do. So I'm going to reach out to Project Opportunity. Y'all be hearing from me.
Or GBLS, or Attorney Dennis, or any of the resources, but definitely take advantage of us. And that's the point. We want everyone in all levels and walks of life, whether you think it's a barrier, it's not a barrier, just go through the program. If you decide you want to seal or expunge, the opportunities there and the resources are there. And so for those who aren't yet eligible for sealing or choose not to, I want to ask, Evelyn and then Frank, if you will, and then Davo, if you could just talk about the experience of the people that you work with who experience barriers to housing and jobs because of their CORI. Evelyn, I know you work a lot with employment partners, and you talked a lot about shifting the narrative. Can you lift some of those points up now? And it really maybe lift up specifically what employees with a record want or need from employers.
Sure. So yeah, we have partnerships with Brigham and Women's Hospital. We work with the JRI, but to speak with Brigham's, because getting into a hospital isn't easy. And as a re-entering citizen, I can't even imagine it being something that is encouraging, just like, oh, I think I'm gonna go put in an application at a hospital for something other than transport or food services, you know what I mean? So working with them and giving our clients this pipeline, it's just encouraging. It gives them some kind of hope for that there's no holding me back from doing this. And that's what I feel like that's what our program does, because as Teron said, he's a facilitator of this, and I graduated from Strive as well. And I always said that I wouldn't have received that time in that program if it wasn't him delivering it. I don't think I would have gotten the same thing out of it if it wasn't him. And I didn't always want to say, oh, he went to jail and this and this and that. So that's why, since he's standing where he is, it gives me so much faith in where I can go. And that's why I believe he's so essential for that role. And that's what our clients, and then as I've never been to jail, so I can imagine somebody that is seeing a Black man that has all these degrees, but also has all this history. He's standing there, he's helping you, he's teaching you, and here we go, and we're gonna place you somewhere where otherwise you wouldn't have taken that step on your own necessarily. We just placed the gentleman into JRI, Justice Resource Institute, and he had a felony background that, or he had a background, I don't know if it was felony, sorry, but he had a background that he was just like discouraged at the beginning, just like, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. I'm here because you guys said you can help. So, please help. And, that's what we do. We also have another program, which because we're talking about returning citizens. So we want to catch them before, but if we can catch them inside while everything is mandatory and you don't have anywhere to go and there's nothing else for you to do but to listen, we have a program, and it's the reentry program, where we have a case manager that he goes in and he teaches the same professional development course that we do in a shorter time, but he also incorporates cognitive behavioral training. And if we can get to kids, if they're getting into jail 18, 19 years old, if we can change their impulsive thinking into critical thinking, that'll be like paramount in them not returning and becoming, that word that you guys keep saying. I can't deliver it. But yeah, so like we want to catch them maybe in school, hopefully, and to hear that if they just at an 85%, if they just read better by the ages of 8 and 10, the difference that can make in their lives, that's insane. So hopefully it's catching them then. But if they do go to jail, catching them and then putting somebody like Tehran or the gentleman Hewitt that we work with, where they are just like, I don't feel bad for you. This is what you got to do, and here's how I'm going to help you do it. And so I'm grateful for that program. Just hearing that it's not something going on in other places, and just the gentleman that runs it is really passionate about it, and it's just a great resource if we really want to stop the turnaround of people just going in and out of jail. That's all I got.
Can I add just a little? I think this is really important. Our focus is partnering with employees that don't just say they're CORI friendly, but actually do it. And what I mean by that is, we have at least 2 employer partners, and Evelyn went through the success program that we have with a local hospital, and how we're able to get people in. It's hard to get a job at the hospital, but how we're able to get people in is case by case basis. It's a probationary period for 90 days. And if they complete the 90 days successfully, the job is theirs and they get a pay raise. It is paid, but they get a pay bump. And that's how we've been able to get a lot of people into this local area hospital. And we do the same, so we modeled that where that's been going on for a few years, but we've modeled that same type of agreement with other employers, where it's like, okay, it's not enough to just say we're CORI friendly. No, it's like, okay, commit to hiring 25 people this year.
I think that's important.
And we have a bigger conversation, and if we do well, then we can talk about committing, right, to a bigger number.
Right.
And also, this is our population.
Great.
We tell them up front.
And I think it's important, like you mentioned, that we're very intentional about our hiring. And I think we at the city are trying to, work with partners such as yourselves to be intentional about partnering with employment partners who are CORI friendly, lifting up those resources. But I want to turn it over to Davo and then Frank briefly. I know we're running against time, just to talk a little bit about the importance of intentional hiring. And then Frank, maybe just elaborate a little bit more about the impact on Black and Brown men in particular, and the resources that you tap to support them holistically.
Thank you, Bethany. So it's been pointed out several times on this call already, the importance of both housing and employment to a person returning back to society. And it makes no sense whatsoever that the barriers that exist are so many that would get in your way of accessing either one of those two things. And so employment is a space that I occupy. I'm a certified career coach. In particular, I'm certified for working with folks who are returning back to society. So it's a daunting task trying to help a person get that first job, especially something that'll be livable wage. Sometimes folks wouldn't have an opportunity while they were incarcerated to gain any additional skills that might make them employable. When I was there, they were trying to get rid of high school programs, the GED and high set programs, when the illiteracy rate is what it is inside of prisons. It's asinine to try to get rid of any educational programs that would exist there. So a person coming home, you're trying to find a job, we're trying to put together a resume where you might have had very, very limited experience. We're trying to get folks prepared in terms of interviewing. So how do you get them to be confident? And that's a tough assignment when the arrest process is degrading. And it's not like the police are going to arrest you in a respectful kind of fashion. The court systems, you're going to get dragged there. Your experience that you go through in jail is not going to be a pleasant one by any means. And then returning back to society is not very welcoming and kind to folks who have that kind of a background. So that could break your spirit in many kinds of ways. And then I can't get a job, then I can't get housing. I probably can't go to the family, friends, etc. I'm barred from certain neighborhoods. I can't get on leases. So these put me in desperate situations. So that piece of employment is crucial to a person being able to stay out. It's crucial. It's crucial. And so I'm glad that the city is doing what it is doing. But bluntly, I wish there was a lot more that was happening to make sure that these barriers are removed and folks have much more easy access to employment opportunities and more so training while they're incarcerated so that they're able to hit the ground running a little bit better and realize that success a little bit sooner. So that's what I would share around that. And again, Attorney Dennis, I really super duper appreciate the work you guys are doing. I deplore the fact that you would need a co-signer to say, hey, trust me, he's co-signing for me. And it's like, it sucks that we even need such a bill to be fought for. Yeah, so I'll pass on that.
Thank you, Davo. Your insight is always so valuable and really appreciate the work that you're doing and the points that you just made. Frank, do you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, just briefly, I'll just, echo what, Davo just shared is, we are making strides, in ensuring that we are hiring people that would like to work, that are qualified to work, and remove those barriers that prevents them from entering into employment with livable wages. And I think, we have a lot of work to do. So, I think like it's great to see, Davo's new position in his office. And I think like until we get to a place where Davo can just talk about his office without highlighting that we're CORI friendly and this is the targeted population, I think like once we get there, then we're heading in the direction that we need to be in. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I'm encouraged, like even just looking at the panel of the folks that are in different roles that are doing the work, that have overcame a lot. And if you met Teron or Davo without knowing their background, you wouldn't even know, the progress in their life to get where they're at. And so they're leading with their experience and expertise. And they just happen to be people that have, been in contact with the criminal justice system. And, I'm encouraged of what the future holds, and I look forward to joining the fight alongside everyone a part of this panel, and removing the conversation around CORIs and just focusing on, qualifications around the actual work. And that's all. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. So before we jump into questions, I want to just give an opportunity to our panelists, each and every one of you, to lift up briefly, one sentence really, if you can. What can we do more of? What do we need more of? And this could be, individually, collectively, in terms of aspirations. Is it narrative shifting, less biases, moving collectively? We don't have lobbyists like we as in this particular population. More partnership. Is it housing resources? Davo mentioned, getting to folks behind the wall. We partnered with Suffolk to ensure that people have access to our resources before they're released. There's a mother on this call who said to me today, it makes such a difference for her son to see our faces as reflections in the community, because folks who come home basically have this PTSD and feel like they're looked down upon. When I say come home from prison. But if they know that we're here for them while they're in prison, that when they come home, that it'll be, it's almost like an early intervention or early connection, if you will, that could potentially impact the outcomes, and ideally reduce recidivism, that's the word, Evelyn, crime and violence, and allow us to really tap a vital part of our workforce. So that was my plug. I inserted it there. But what do you think? I'll start with Ventura, Attorney Dennis. Go to you, Frank, Evelyn, Davo, Crispin, Tehran. I don't know if Roof is still on, but hopefully you remember that order. So Ventura, Attorney Dennis.
Yeah. So I think, in one sentence, we're trying to be brief here. I just think partnerships are important. And I'm glad that this call enabled a lot of organizations to come together and share resources, because as many other panelists have mentioned tonight, unfortunately, people just don't know where to go for help and how to get the resources that they need. And so I think partnerships together would also help our legislative advocacy as well, and knowing what bills we're trying to be passed so that we can get behind them. As you mentioned, we don't have a lot of lobbyists pushing for these important bills for our community. And so I think continue to build partnerships to challenge the laws that exist now, and also face the biases that exist head on by confronting them, and continue to contribute members of our community to be in these spaces to help, that there is room for them here.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, I think, continue to see kind of more people that are in this fight working collectively and intentional around moving the needle, not incrementally, but moving it with a sense of urgency. But also I think like it's going to take political will on a local level, and I think we're moving in the right direction on a city level, but state and nationally, to make this change that's needed today. So we're not having this conversation 20 years from now and talking about CORI reform, that we're doing it today because it's needed today.
I guess the lack of education, or the lack of knowledge, right? So if we can get it out there, and just, all right, because we got to look, right? So people have to look for this information, but just make it so that it's just accessible, or it's the lack of knowledge. And I just feel like we need to get the knowledge out there more. And I know it's higher than us just saying, hey, just make a session in school about it. No, because it's not going to happen. So it's the lack of knowledge and how we get it out to them in time.
Thank you, Evelyn. Davo.
Yes, so some of what I already mentioned before, where I'd like to see this conversation be had in that ADA space, where this population is being looked at as a protected group. And I'd also like to see some of vernacular removed from the lexicon. So we went from ex-offenders as being the kind of politically correct term to use to it's no longer cool. So now we're returning citizens, and I'm looking to see what the next less degrading name will be for that population. And I'd also like to see just a lot more collaboration around it, and to help to remove the stigma in society in general. I feel like that'll help to move the needle a lot for folks who are experiencing those kinds of things. Thank you guys for taking the time and letting me be here and speak.
Thank you, Davo. Attorney Birnbaum?
Oh, I'm sorry. I like to see the word criminal come off that record, that offender record information. If you haven't been convicted of anything, it shouldn't be labeled a criminal. I'd also like to see the before these bills are drawn up, maybe there should be somewhat of a more diverse think tank for people that it actually affects, because just reading over the CORI reforms that have happened over the years, like ban the box and all of those things, it doesn't exactly help you get a job, because the employer can still ask you. So we have to deal with what's real, right? It doesn't help you to get housing because they can still access it. So some of those things need to be pulled back and examined a little bit differently for the person who actually goes through those steps. All right, and yes, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Teron. Attorney Birnbaum?
Yes, thank you. I see that there's one question that hasn't been answered yet by the city in the Q&A. And this is an individual with the initial CC who's saying, how do we get my organization on the list of second chance employers? So perhaps somebody from the city can give a little information, and then I'll answer the question. Bethany, just didn't want that to go by before we lose that attendee, because that's exciting. But one of the things that would be wonderful to see in our future is if all direct care staff in a nonprofit setup or in clinics and medical centers everywhere, if people who do the work where they're encountering folks with records as a part of their daily routine, if those folks could all understand what sealing and expungement is and understand how to talk about a criminal record comfortably with someone, then I think we'll all be better off, because the more staff in that capacity that understand it, the more they can refer clients that they have to the free clinics that we've been discussing, so somebody can get a lawyer. So I just encourage anybody that's interested in a training like that to contact me. I'll put my email in the Q&A. I give those trainings for free, and I love training direct care staff all over the Commonwealth. The second thing, beside more training, so more clients can get referred, is that all of us, including Ventura, who went before me, but all of us who provide the free legal services and train lawyers to do that, just keep at it, because we have totally only touched the tip of the iceberg. Whether it's in Boston or elsewhere in the Commonwealth, so many people don't know they can seal or don't know how to go about it. So again, the more of us that get the training about how to refer, then I think the better off all of us are, that more and more people can deal with their record and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Falk, are you still on? I know he had to attend to 7, but I see him on.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bethany.
Oh, this was your one word, but your one.
One word?
One sentence.
Thank you.
But you also are entitled to closing remarks. So if you wanted to interweave them.
Okay, so first and foremost, want to make sure we extend huge gratitude to our panelists. Appreciate you guys taking this time on a Tuesday evening. I'm sure you had many things to do, so we appreciate you taking the time, sharing your expertise, and showing your passion for not only for this subject, but for this population and for our community and for our people. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you for that. And also for our attendees, I want to thank you the most for showing up and being present. I think as a city, we recognize that we have a role to play, but we're not we're not the only piece to this puzzle, and we need everyone who's on this call to make sure that we are being intentional around joining our efforts and intentional around sharing our resources, but also being real intentional about sort of learning to start speaking that same language. And because that's what it's really going to take to sort of push those stakeholders, push those elected officials to take up this cause. We have to be, we have to do the lobbying, and we have to do it collectively. So again, I thank you all for your presence. Project Opportunity, again, is about ensuring that the city of Boston is fulfilling its obligation to be a city of second chances. It's doing all that it can to create platforms and build platforms and relationships and pathways to sustainable housing and gainful employment, but also most importantly, to make sure everyone feels like the city is theirs and they have an opportunity to be viable here. So Bethany, thank you for organizing this, but most importantly, I want to thank our attendees for showing up. So thank you.
Thank you. And I know, thank you, Dr. Falk, for your remarks. I know that there were so many questions. We answered 9. There are a few open. I have copied all of them into a text body, and I'll also save this so that we can get to many of those questions offline. I know there are questions about eligibility around sealing. That is why we encourage you to go through Project Opportunities, CORI Sealing and Expungement Clinic. We do always try to run on a tight time, but so we are at time, but I do want to take a moment and thank Mayor Wu for her commitment to returning citizens, and of course to Trin Nguyen and the Office of Workforce Development for really lifting up this population. It hadn't been done before. In the past 3 years, we've done a lot to serve residents impacted by CORI through the CORI Sealing and Expungement programs, but also by lifting up CORI-friendly job opportunities and training and educational resources as well. So thank you to everyone who's joined this important conversation. Very importantly, thank you to our panelists again for your service, for your time and your service, to our providers, partners, residents, everyone on. Your contributions and partnership really serve to support Project Opportunity and the most vulnerable population, arguably, in our city, in our community, as we seek to go beyond breaking barriers to employment through our CORI Sealing and Expungement.
Is the battery in?
Doctor, you're not on mute. Hi, Madison. Through our CORI Sealing and Expungement program, but also by continuing to highlight important solution-driven conversations for residents impacted by CORI, such as this. We will get to all of your questions. Don't forget, there's a job fair happening tomorrow virtually. Project Opportunities website, all of that information will be included in a follow-up email to attendees. With that, I want to thank you all so much for joining. Before I end, I will make sure I see additional questions in the Q&A. I will copy and paste all of those. Your name and email is on the registration link, so I will find that and make sure we get to as many questions as possible and make sure you have our contact information. Thank you all again for this important dialogue. It's a slow-moving ship, but we are turning and making great progress. And it's many thanks to the work of the panelists, service providers, and everyone who's joined in. With that, I wish you all a safe and happy evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Night.
Good night.